Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You are here with Austin from Ohio, and today is Friday, April 9th, 2021. I have a couple things for you today. Just the regular old ironclad videos that I do. Hopefully, this one won't get taken down because at any given moment, my channel can be completely erased from the digital universe. All it takes is one more video being pulled on this channel. A couple things I wanted to say before I jump in here. I wanted to address something. Earlier, I saw a video that Tim put up, and it was about this certain guy. I'm not going to say who it is because we don't do that here. And this guy was talking about somebody who is very respected in the truth community. I won't say his name either, but people who watch my channel usually watch Tim and Carol and other people like that. You probably already know who I'm talking about. And he said something online that could prove very dangerous for this individual. I don't know why he did that. I even went after Tim put up that video, and I went to his channel to see what kind of videos he puts up. Things like, he only has like 100 subscribers, but it doesn't really matter how many you have, whatever. And I was going through his comments and stuff, and he's actually kind of mean to the people that comment on his channel and stuff. And if you're going to be in this role as messenger and you're going to play that role to the people, bring them news and stuff, you kind of have to have a form of respect, not only for your fellow man and your fellow people of the world, because people from all over the world at least watch my channel, but you also have to have some respect for yourself. And you definitely have to have respect for people that you might be addressing. What that guy did was not cool. Not cool at all whatsoever. You don't go on your channel or anything like that, your social media, or even in just everyday general life, you don't go and say things and name drop people and say certain things that could, again, prove to be dangerous toward them. A lot of you probably know what I'm talking about. And I think I seen that guy comment on my stuff before. So if you are watching and you know who you are, I'm not going to say your name or your channel name because I won't put you out there like that. But that is not cool. And please don't ever do that again. Don't ever do that again. If you do, or if anyone does, name drops people like that and starts just saying things off the wall, I will call you out. I don't play that. We're all supposed to be on the same team. I understand at the time, he probably didn't think it was as serious as it could be and as it actually is, but it's just not something that you should do. It's not something that I would do. I don't believe Tim would ever do that. I don't believe Carol would ever do that. I don't believe that anybody else would ever name drop somebody like that. So please, don't do that. You know what time it is. You know what these people are doing. You know how they treat us already, looking for any little thing to come after us. And you're going to name drop somebody like that. Not cool at all. All right, let's dig in. This one is from the New York Times, and it reads, Biden creating commission to study expanding the Supreme Court. How wonderful. The commission will also examine other potential changes, such as term limits for justices. Progressives are pushing President Biden to add seats to balance the court's conservative majority. And it just says progressives have urged President Biden to consider adding seats to the Supreme Court after President Donald J. Trump solidified the court's conservative majority with his 3 appointments. Oh, what do you know? I can't even read the entire thing. I'm going to have to pull up a different one. Stand by. All right, let's try this one. Biden appoints commission to study adding seats term limits for Supreme Court. Okay. President Joe Biden will create a commission to study possible changes to the Supreme Court, including adding seats or instituting term limits, the White House announced Friday. Establishment of a commission to study the issue was a campaign promise from Biden, who has never explicitly said if he supports court packing or instituting term limits. But Biden has indicated that he believes the court should not be subject to the political swings of the electoral cycle. If they shouldn't be subject to the political swings of the electoral cycle, then what is he doing? Anyway, the president said, quote, the last thing we need to do is turn the Supreme Court into just a political football. Whoever has the most votes gets whatever they want. Biden told CBS News program 60 Minutes in October 2020, presidents come and go, Supreme Court justices stay for generations. Okay, so I would argue that he is doing this because he wants to pack the court. And they, the powers that should not be, learned a long time ago that if you really want to put a damper on Americans' lives, you need to control the court. It doesn't really matter. I personally believe that this is part of the whole, quote, federalization process, even though the Supreme Court's already a federal thing, but that's not what I mean, and that's not what they mean by federalization. This commission that he is going to, we'll read it right here. 36-person commission is set to study debate for and against making changes to the court, hold public meetings to solicit opinions from outsiders, and provide a report to the White House after 180 days. It's unclear if the commission will provide recommendations to Biden or simply analysis for the arguments for and against reform. Biden has been under pressure to add seats to the bench to compensate for a rightward political shift after former President Donald Trump appointed 3 nominees. One of those appointees, Justice Brett Kavanaugh, filled an Obama-era vacancy after then Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell delayed the confirmation process in the Senate through the 2016 election. Third appointee, Justice Amy Coney Barrett, filled the vacancy left by Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death in the final months of the Trump administration. 6 of the 9 current Supreme Court justices were appointed by conservative presidents. Okay, so it doesn't matter if they were appointed by conservative or Democrat, whatever, liberal presidents. It doesn't matter. I believe this is part of the whole federalization, and I'm doing the air quotes, federalization process, to where what happens is, like they want to do with the elections, like they want to do with, about guns, like they want to do with voting and the border stuff and states and whatnot. The election thing really bothers me, though, because we're supposed to have, and we don't, but we're supposed to have free elections in this country. Local, state, and federal. But if they're going to nationalize all of these things, just like Hitler did, nationalize all of these things, then what can they do? This is part of the Great Reset. What can they do after they get everything compartmentalized into one tightly knit little federalized group? then they can hand it to the globalists on a silver platter. Federalize everything, including states and state rights and state elections and local stuff. Compartmentalize it, nationalize it, and then globalize it. Okay, the commission will have 36 members, some of them prominent names. Legal advisor to Biden's campaign, Bob Bauer, and Yale Law School professor, Christina Rodriguez. Well, oh, great, Yale. Pfft, that's nice. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Yale where Skull and Bones originates? Please correct me if I'm wrong, because I could be wrong about that. But I believe Yale is where Skull and Bones originates. Not saying that this woman was in the Skull and Bones, but among the commissioners are renowned constitutional scholar Lawrence Tribe, NWO President Sherilyn Ifill, Brennan Center for Justice President Michael Waldman, and voting rights expert Michael Kang. Liberal activist groups see Biden's appointment to the commission as merely avoiding a decision whether to add seats to the court. This White House Judicial Reform Commission has a historic opportunity to both explain the gravity of the threat and to help contain it. But we don't have time to spend 6 months studying the issue, especially without a promise of real conclusions at the end, said Aaron Belkin, director of Take Back the Court, a group pushing for more justices on the bench. What do you mean, take back the court? I'm pretty sure the Constitution allots the Supreme Court a certain amount of justices. And this just keeps going on about this stuff here, and commission, mostly made up of academics, includes far-right voices, and is not tasked with making formal recommendations unlikely to meaningfully advance the ball on court reform. Plan to spend coming months to organizing additional support at the grassroots level and working with members of the Congress who would already understand the urgency here to file legislation. This entire thing is literally just their... I heard of this guy before, I actually recognize him. But what they're doing is they're going to add more seats to the court. They're going to nationalize, quote, the court, and then they're going to hand it off and globalize it, because all of this is part of the reset. Let's move on. Here's one that I saw today, and I can't say that I'm happy about this, because you're never supposed to be happy when anybody passes away, but I kind of can't help myself on feeling a little joy, and I deeply apologize for that, and forgive me, Lord, but I am human and I am a sinner. But Prince Philip, husband of Britain's Queen Elizabeth II, dies at 99. And where do you think he's at right now? And I would ask him, was it worth it? Prince Philip, Queen Elizabeth II's husband, longest serving consort of any British monarch, has died at age 99. Statement posted on the royal family's website Friday morning said it is with deep sorrow that Her Majesty the Queen announces the death of her beloved husband, His Royal Highness the Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. His Royal Highness passed away peacefully this morning at Windsor Castle. Further announcements will be made in due course. The royal family joined with people around the world in mourning his loss. His death was met with a flood of tributes from across Britain and the world in accordance with the tradition. A framed notice containing the news was also placed on the railings outside Buckingham Palace. And it just goes on to talk about his career, record, whatever. This guy was Illuminati as it gets. This guy is obviously one of the Well, his bloodline is one of the 13 bloodlines, of course. He served a very, very powerful position in Great Britain. He is definitely responsible for a lot of infringements and rights being stripped from the British people. And I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on for a minute here. I don't know if many of you have heard of, and this is hypothetical, this is opinionated, this is what I believe. I don't have anything to back this up as of yet, but I'm sure I will. There's something else that goes with this too. I believe that this may have been a blood sacrifice. And I hope I don't sound insane saying that. Like I said, this is opinionated. It's hypothetical for now. But I do believe that this may be a blood sacrifice because they do this. This is what they do every now and then. And what's going to happen? What's going to come out of this? It's going to keep people talking all over the world, even here in the United States. My mom is actually currently posting about this all day because for some reason she has an obsession with the royal family. I don't know why. A lot of Americans do. I really don't understand it. Check this paragraph out. He helped create the model of the British royal family that has enabled it to continue forward into the 21st century. I would say forward into the New World Order, because when you see that they say things like that, like, oh, this technology is going to move us further into the 21st century, that what they mean is further into the New World Order. But I do believe that this was a blood sacrifice. Even if he just so happened to die of, quote, natural causes, or if he was meant to live another couple months or a year or so, or even, it doesn't matter even if he died naturally, they can still use this to, how do they say it, increase their effects on people's minds. And there's another one that goes with this that may be sacrificial. And that is rapper and actor DMX, dead at 50. Earl Simmons, better known as the rapper DMX, died Friday at White Plains Hospital in White Plains, New York. According to a statement from his family, he had been on life support for the past few days. Following a heart attack, he was 50. He was a warrior, fought till the end. He loved his family with all of his heart. Cherished times we spent with him, the statement said. And Earl's music inspired countless fans across the world. His iconic legacy will live on forever. We really appreciate all the love and support during this incredibly difficult time. How weird is this? DMX had a signature rasp to his voice. He delivered his lines with the desperate aggression that propelled his debut album. It's dark and hell is hot. To multi-platinum level sales. He followed it up with a string of chart-topping albums that included songs such as Party Up in Here. Party Up, Up in Here. His rise in music also gave way to acting in movies such as Belly Romeo Must Die and Cradle to the Grave. Weird that his first big album was called It's Dark and Hell is Hot. And you always hear these people, these actors, musicians, even politicians, whoever, you always hear them talk about how they sold their souls to Satan. That's not a metaphor. They actually mean that they sold their souls to Satan. And I might do a video compilation on that, because I actually have a whole bunch of different examples of that. Also, I don't know if many of you know, but DMX actually has been speaking out lately. He has been speaking out against the agenda. He has been speaking out against spiritual warfare. There's actually a whole bunch of video footage of him doing that. And he was on a podcast recently where he was talking about, he was telling a story of some butterfly or something, and he had, and I think he was talking about Project Monarch, like MK Ultra type thing. But he was talking about this butterfly and how the butterfly was so beautiful, and he went to catch the butterfly or something, and then the butterfly died. And then he said it's metaphorical, and the people weren't like understanding what he meant. And then he was like, "See, you got to know what we're up against." And then you hear a guy, he was like, "Oh no, we don't do that here." And then DMX was like, "Yeah, we do actually, and we need to know what we're up against, because if not, how are we ever gonna win the war?" And they're like, "We don't do that here, so just drop it." And he just kept going on about that sort of thing, but I'm pretty sure they cut him off. I'm not 100% sure about that, but same thing as everyone that's came out and spoke out against the agenda in the past. They tend to die. Very traumatic and sudden deaths. But yes, DMX, Prince Philip, dead. And right here, DMX was a devout Christian, and he would end his live sets with a prayer. 2019 interview with GQ, he talked about being so overwhelmed after shows that he would need a private moment of his own to pray. I just take a minute for myself, and I just thank him. I praise him, and I'm like, thank you. I'm like, who am I to deserve this? We all bleed the same blood. I don't know of his affiliations with God. I don't know of the spiritual nature of this man. But I do know enough about these celebrities and stuff that when they're talking about praying to God, they're actually talking about Lucifer. Not saying that's what's going on here. It might be, but that's what they do. All right, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this video. I wanted to bring this up again because, well, it's again, but it's, oh, what was I going to say? I keep losing my train of thought. I hate that. But it says, U.S. Supreme Court gives states, localities green light on gun control. Supreme Court gave an apparent green light Monday to lawmakers who want to restrict the sale of guns, such as rapid-fire weapons, that have been used in the recent wave of mass shootings from Paris to San Bernardino, California. And this is actually, nope, never mind, not the one that I wanted. Time out. Sorry about that. I was unprepared. This is the one that I wanted to bring up. Supreme Court weighs whether to enter gun debate amid calls for stricter limits. A pair of mass shootings in Georgia and Colorado last month thrust gun control back to the forefront of public debate, with Democrats in Congress and President Biden calling for swift legislative action. But amid the public outcry over gun violence, I would say manufactured outcry, but amid the public manufactured outcry over gun violence, Supreme Court's 9 members are meeting behind closed doors to discuss whether to add next term's docket disputes over gun regulations, with a ruling from the justices potentially having far-reaching implications for firearm restrictions at the federal and state levels. Oh, absolutely, it's far-reaching. The Supreme Court reaches all the way down across the street from your house. The High Court could say as soon as mid-April whether it will hear cases involving the constitutionality of licenses to carry concealed handguns in public or the rights of convicted felons to possess firearms. And gun rights supporters and some of the justices themselves argue the Supreme Court is long overdue to define the reach of the Second Amendment. Pretty sure this definition of the Second Amendment is not even for them. It's not even in their purview. The Second Amendment doesn't even have anything to do with Americans owning guns. It has to do with restricting the government's ability to get involved in your right to keep and bear arms. Get out of here. It has nothing to do with, oh, Americans can own guns. No. It says, basically, the government cannot get involved in people's right to keep and bear arms. And that is exactly as it sounds. Anything in law or that they say, or the executive actions that we're going to read about here in a few minutes, those are all infringements. An infringement is any law that bars your right to keep and bear arms. Even if it's just something little, like banning a certain accessory or something. The nation is split, with the Second Amendment alive and well in the vast middle of the nation, and those same rights disregarded near the coast. Paul Clement, the former Solicitor General who is representing gun owners challenging New York's licensing rules, told the Supreme Court in a filing last month, whatever else the framers intended in enshrining the Second Amendment in our Charter of Fundamental Freedoms and guaranteeing rights to keep and bear arms to all the people, it was not to tolerate a nation divided on an issue this significant. Already scheduled for discussion by the justices at 2 of its closed-door conferences, the case out of New York involves the state's ban on carrying concealed handguns in public without a license. The case should be easy. It literally should be easy. What is a license? Government permission. Oh, so you have to get government permission to keep and bear arms? Yes. Oh, well, that's illegal because the Constitution says the government can't get involved in the right to keep and bear arms. Oh. Case closed. That easy. But to obtain a license, an applicant must demonstrate a proper cause and special need for self-protection, distinguishable from that of the general community or of persons engaged in the same profession. So you must demonstrate a proper cause and a special need for self-protection that's distinguishable from that of the general community or of persons engaged in the same profession. Those people own guns because they own guns, that's it. Even if you like to collect them, or that's a good enough reason for me. You like to collect guns? Cool, whatever, not my business. A lot of people own guns for defense of life, liberty, and property against any encroaching threat to their life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, or property. You don't need a special need for self-protection. You don't need a proper cause. The government is not even supposed to be in this game. They're not even supposed to be in this at all. 2 New York residents, joined by the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, challenged the ban after their applications to obtain a license to carry a concealed handgun in public were denied. The gun owners argue the law is an infringement on their Second Amendment right to bear arms, but the lower courts have upheld the rules. Well, of course the lower courts are going to uphold the rules, because who do they answer to? Big government? Oh, gee, that's hard. And these gun owners are correct. The so-called law is an infringement on their creator-endowed, God-given right to keep and bear arms for protection. And a lot of people in the world have been so brainwashed and so beaten down with propaganda that they can't even fathom what it would be like to even touch or own a firearm. I was reading through some comments the other day on my social media on, I believe it was a Los Angeles Times article, something about guns. Actually, no, I have the story. I'm going to read it to you guys here in a minute. I don't have the comments, though, because I'd have to go on my social media and go through whatever. But this woman was like, oh, over here in the UK, and people on here from the UK, I know that there are a couple people on my channel. Jay Board, you're from the UK. Jay Board, I think his name's John. John, please tell me if this is a thought or a perception in England. This woman was saying that in the UK, even the thought of somebody wanting a gun, the public automatically assumes that they are crazy, a lunatic that needs locked up. And then she was saying something like, oh, but in America, people are just walking around with guns and shooting each other. Well, first of all, it's not the Wild West. Regardless of what you hear in the globalist establishment, New World Order, mouthpiece, mockingbird media, we are not over here just shooting each other. Take a listen. You hear that? That is the sound of peace. Of course, it's happening in small, isolated instances. Yes. Of course, people are shooting each other in small, isolated instances. But guess what? People are also running people down with cars, stabbing people, choking them, raping them. There's a lot of ways that you can hurt people. But by no means is this the Wild West. I see people saying that all the time. Oh, America's like the Wild West again. I wouldn't set foot there. Actually, maybe you should come here so you can experience it for yourself and stop listening to your television when they tell you that we are barbaric. That's what the New World Order wants you to believe, that we are barbaric and nobody needs to own a gun in the 21st century. That's barbaric. Okay, well then once all the guns are given up, you'll see how barbaric it actually is when the real barbarians come knocking down your door and come rolling tanks into your town. Then you're going to see what barbarism looks like in its rawest form. And barbarism, to me, would be these order followers. Pretty barbaric, right? Just following orders, not questioning anything. Gunning people down, whether in their homeland or in foreign lands, because another human being told them to. Did that argument hold up in the Nuremberg trials? No. The German soldiers under Hitler, they tried to say that. Oh, we were just following orders. And you know what they said at the Nuremberg trials? That's not good enough. Following orders. Okay, so if I ordered you right now to go and beat your head off the window, are you going to do that? No. You know why? One, you see me as a human being. You see me as your equal, which is what we should see these people in power as, our equals, because that's what they are. Our equals. We all bleed the same. We all bleed in general. Just because somebody tells you to do something doesn't mean you should do it. And to me, that is barbaric. hurting people because somebody told you to, that you believe has a lot more power than they actually do. If nobody obeys, nobody rules. Imagine if all of these henchmen just said no. We're not going to enforce your New World Order. We're not going to enforce any of this. We're not working for you anymore. Then what do you have? A bunch of evil old bastards sitting in a room shouting for others to carry out their evil deeds. But guess what? It ain't getting done now because nobody obeys. But then again, half the people that are carrying out these edicts don't even know that they are carrying out these evil plans. They think that what they are doing is good. I hear people all the time, they're like, oh, that's not happening. You know how many people they would have to get in on that, and they would have to be willing to do that? No. You don't understand how it works. They don't tell the lower people. They don't tell them that, hey, you're going to do this because we're trying to take over. No, they're going to tell them you're protecting your community. Communitarianism. We're trying to make the world a better place. And then they'll be like, which they are, oh, okay, yeah, I want to make the world a better place. I'm going to follow these orders because I'm making the world a better place. That's how it works. But when I read that comment from that woman, I was very troubled by the fact that they see people in the UK, and I assume most of Europe and Australia. I was troubled by the fact that they see people who have guns or want a gun or even want to touch a gun as a mental patient that belongs in an institution to be re-educated before being reintegrated back into society. And that reminds me of something that Bill Cooper was talking about a long time ago. And he said, in the New World Order, patriots will be considered mentally incapable and crazy and deserve to be locked up. Is that not what is happening right now? Also, while we're on the topic of guns, I want to say something also. I see a lot of people and they say, oh, gun control, follow our example in Europe and Australia and everywhere else because we ban guns and we don't have to deal with any of this anymore. And they say, oh, well, and our government hasn't came down on us. And I will always tell them, like, yeah, you know why? Because they're waiting. They're not going to go to Australia, take their firearms, and institute New World Order control in Australia, and then move on to England and do it one at a time like that. No. Because then we in the United States would see that, and we'd be like, oh no, we're not giving up our firearms. No way, look what they're doing in Australia and England. They already got them locked down, shipping them off to concentration camps and all of this. And they're already exterminating them over there to be in line with the Georgia Guidestones. And they know that, so they are waiting. They cut the low-hanging fruit first, before going for the ripest apple on the tree, which is the United States and our 400 million plus firearms. An armed society is a peaceful society. And people do go breaking in houses around here, and they're, well, in my area, they do, like, here and there. But you know why that doesn't happen on a mass scale? Think about it. Why don't people just go breaking in any random house? Because they're worried that, hey, if I do that, I might get shot. Which, well, let's face it, most people, especially in my area, if you break into their house, they're gonna blast you. I like to think that I would give somebody a chance. Like, if they came in and they were, like, trying to steal something or whatever, I'd be like, hey, get out of my house. And I am calling the police because you broke into my house. And if you don't leave, then I'm going to have to take other action. On the contrary, if somebody came in and they had a weapon and it was visible and I could see it, I'm not taking any chance with you. I actually have a story about that. And I know I'm rambling again, so just call me the rambling man, whatever you want. I don't care. I like to talk. Bear with me. I know some people on here hate it, but I know people on here like it. I'm going to tell you a personal story that happened to me. When we first moved to the town that we live in now, literally, and well, this guy that the story's about, he's actually in prison now because of some stuff that was going on with him for a while, and he was under investigation for a while. And he was like into drugs really bad, and he was like one of the big time dealers in my area. I didn't know any of this when we first moved up here, but he only lived like 2 blocks away. They bulldozed his house and everything because he's going away for a very long time, because he got in a lot of trouble. And a lot of it involved children, because people would bring their kids over, and they had video footage of this somehow. People would bring their kids over within like the last 6 months they were watching him, and the parents would pass out, and the kids would still be there and like running around in the yard and stuff. It wasn't a good situation, but it is resolved now. Anyway, like 2 months in, when we first moved here, I come outside to start the car to go to work, because that's what I do. I wake up, I get my my wife wakes up first. She gets the coffee, she brings it in, gives me coffee, I drink it, I get up. First thing I do is go outside, smoke a cigarette, start the car, try to wake up a little bit. That's what I did. So I got up, I came outside, and I sat down, and there was a car that was parked behind my car in my parking space. We have street parking, but it's like, I think there's 3 whole parking spaces that are mine. So I come out, and there's a car parked behind my car, and I'm sitting there, and I'm looking in the rear view, and I don't see anybody in the driver's seat. I see a passenger, and he's sleeping. Well, I thought he was sleeping. He was passed out. And so I'm looking, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe, they're picking up somebody on my street for work. Whatever. Maybe they're just parked here for a minute doing whatever. I'm going to let it slide, but I'm going to watch them. All of a sudden, I see the driver. He starts flailing and like smacking his arms. He looked like a wacky wailing, inflatable arm flailing tube, man. And yes, I know what those are called. Please don't laugh at me. He looked like that. So if you can imagine that in your head when you go to those used car lots, that's what this guy looked like. So I'm like, now I'm freaked out. I'm like, okay, so these people are parked behind me, and they're doing all this. Now, I didn't know this guy, nothing like that. So I go back in the house, and I tell my wife, I'm like, hey, there's a car parked behind us, and I'm pretty sure they're on drugs. And she's like, what are you talking about? I said, well, the passenger has passed out, and the driver, I didn't see him for the first 5 minutes or so, but then he started flailing about, oh, whatever. And then he passed out again, and he just let his head fall wherever. And she was like, oh. And we had to leave for work real fast. And I actually forgot to mention a detail. I turned the car off and went in the house because I was worried that they might try to steal the car. So I told her, and these were my exact words. I said, you want me to call the police because we're about to leave for work and I don't want them here whenever we're here. I said, or do you want me to go out there and tell them to leave? And I can be very persuasive. And then she was like, oh, well, we better just call the police because, you know, we just moved here, whatever, this and that. I said, okay. So I called the local police station. I went in the bathroom, brushed my teeth, come back out and look, and the cop already had the passenger out and in the back of the cop car. And I was like, man, that's quick. Real quick. And so I come back out to start the car, and he's like, oh, were you the one that called? I said, yeah, I am. He's like, do you know these people? I said, nope, I do not. Don't want them here. Get them out. And he said, all right, that's all I needed to know. And so we left for work and came back, and they weren't here, and our neighbors told us that they got arrested and the car got towed. And I was like, okay, whatever. Well, we have community dumpsters, and I always walk trash bags down. It's literally like just the other end of the block. So when the trash gets filled, I walk it down, and the cop was sitting down there. And so once I get close, I throw the trash bags in and turn around and go to walk away, and I hear somebody yell, hey. And so I turn around and look, and it's the cop, and he's like got his door open, and he's like waving me to come over, and I'm like, oh man, what is this? So I go over there, and he's like, hey, aren't you the one that called the other day about those guys that were parked in your driveway or whatever? And I was like, yeah. He's like, oh, well, yeah, I was the arresting officer. And I was like, oh, okay. I just, we were leaving for work. I just wanted to get him out of there. I just moved here like 2 months ago. And he's like, oh, no, I just wanted to tell you. He's like, they did have drugs and stuff on them. And I was like, I kind of figured that because they were already pretty messed up. And he's like, oh, yeah. And I told him, you guys were on private property because it's my property. Like, you're on private property. You're not allowed to be here. You're behind the wheel, under the influence, whatever. And he said, I just wanted to let you know that they were planning on breaking into somebody's house. I don't know if it was your house or one of your neighbor's houses, but they were planning on breaking into somebody's house because they told us that when we brought them down to the station. And I was like, oh, well, if they would have broken into my house when I was there, I'd have shot them. And you know what the cop said? He said, well, that would have been your right. And I said, you're damn right it would have been my right, just like that. And he laughed, and I laughed, and that was it. So my first, quote, experience with the police of this town, after being told for months not to move here because they were terrible and this and that, my first experience was actually half decent. And the police have never bothered us in this town. We go to work. I'm always outside doing stuff. They drive by all the time. They honk the horn, this and that, and they never tried to violate my rights once. They never tried to infringe any way or complain about the way that I keep my yard. I don't keep it messy, but, So I just wanted to tell you guys that story while we're talking about guns and stuff, because in a lot of places you'll tell a cop, like, oh, this guy was going to break into my house. I'd have shot him, and then the cop would have been like, oh, you got guns? How many guns you got? This and that, whatever. That did not happen for me. Anyway, now that I'm done rambling, we can move on. Now they have asked the Supreme Court to decide whether the Second Amendment allows the government to prohibit citizens from carrying concealed handguns outside the home for self-defense. Here's something for you. Keep and bear. What does bear mean? Carry. Quote, many people in America are hoping finally there will be legislative action taken on gun violence prevention. Meanwhile, it looks like the court is going to go in the direction of making it harder to regulate guns. Hannah Shearer, litigation director at the Giffords Law Center, told CBS News. It's a key piece of the conversation that maybe hasn't gotten as much attention. It's been a decade since the Supreme Court issued its last landmark rulings in Second Amendment disputes, much to the chagrin of gun rights advocates who argue further action addressing the scope of the Second Amendment is needed. In 2008, Supreme Court ruled the Second Amendment protects the right to have firearms in the home for self-defense. And in 2010, the court said the right to bear arms applies to the states, while the Supreme Court in 2019 heard arguments in a challenge to a New York City rule restricting where licensed handgun owners could transport their locked and unloaded firearms. Justices tossed out the case last year after the limits at issue were changed. Supreme Court then spurned a host of challenges to state gun restrictions in June, though many believe the decade-long wait for a ruling could be coming to a close. Shearer said the High Court's reluctance in its last term to accept the Second Amendment case could have hinged on Chief Justice John Roberts, whose fifth vote strike-down challenge rule may not have been a sure thing. But the appointment of Justice Amy Coney Barrett to fill the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat diluted Roberts' influence as the court conservative majority grew to 6-3. Now that Justice Barrett is on the court as another reliable vote in the conservative direction on Second Amendment cases, that might mean the floodgates are open and the courts start to review Second Amendment decisions more openly, she said. I want to stop you right there. Judge Coney Barrett is definitely against your right to keep and bear arms. And I won't do it in this video, but in my next video, I'll show you why. Jonathan Adler, law professor at Case Western Reserve University, said he expects the next gun regulation to land before the Supreme Court to be an outlier. The likelihood of a broad, sweeping gun decision that wipes out or curtains gun regulations nationwide is unlikely. Adler noted the New York City transport rule considered by the justice in 2019 was unlike other firearms regulations, and he predicted that even a ruling on carrying guns outside the home could be narrow, as the court's ruling in 2008 District of Columbia versus Heller was. While advocates on both sides of the gun debate are expecting the Supreme Court to end its long drought and decide a Second Amendment case, the question remains whether it will be one involving concealed carry licensing rules, like the New York case, or the rights of convicted felons to possess firearms. The justices are scheduled to discuss at their private conference next week the case of Ken Flick, a Georgia man convicted of criminal copyright violation and smuggling for importing. Wow, I read something earlier about this guy that got arrested in my area for importuning, so I thought that's what that word was. He counterfeit cassette tapes in 1987. Because of his felony convictions, Flick is barred under federal law from possessing firearms. Why? Why is this man barred from possessing firearms when the only victim of the crime was the government? That there was no, it wasn't a violent crime. That's one of the problems with all of these federal laws. Not a violent crime. Should not be barred, quote, from possessing firearms. While legislatures have wide latitude to define crimes and classify them as felonies, they are not free to cast people out from Constitution's protection. Lawyers for Flick told the Supreme Court in their petition urging the justices to hear the case. Here's something. We need to quit talking about the Constitution as not the whole Constitution, the Bill of Rights as a, quote, legal document. It's not technically a legal document. It is the Bill of Rights, not the whole Constitution. The Bill of Rights is a document that outlines God-given rights. The Constitution guarantees those by putting them in writing, but the Bill of Rights is unchanged, even in other countries. And if you read the founders' writings, they explicitly said 100,000 times that these are rights that do not come from man. They are creator-endowed rights. They come from God. Barrett's ascension to the Supreme Court could raise the likelihood the justices take up the dispute over felon disarmament, as she authored a dissent in 2019 while serving on the 7th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in a challenge involving the same law at issue in Flick's case. That case, often cited during her confirmation hearing, involved Ricky Cantor, who pleaded guilty to one count of mail fraud and because he was felony conviction, was prohibited from possessing a firearm under federal law and Wisconsin law. While the Seventh Circuit said Cantor's challenge to the constitutionality of federal law was, quote, without merit, Barrett disagreed. Absent evidence that he either belongs to a dangerous category or bears individual markers of risk, permanently disqualifying Cantor from possessing a gun violates the Second Amendment, she wrote. A Supreme Court decision on whether to address the scope of the Second Amendment comes as Democrats in Congress have renewed calls for more stringent gun laws, following the shootings in the Atlanta area and Boulder. While Mr. Biden has urged lawmakers to act, he's poised to announce Thursday executive action to curb violence. And we actually will go there now. I won't read the rest of this. And here we are. Biden announces executive actions to curb gun violence, quote, epidemic. That's what he's calling it. President Biden unveiled his first attempts to curb gun violence on Thursday, announcing a set of modest moves designed to begin revamping federal gun policy by tweaking the government's definition of a firearm and more aggressively responding to urban gun violence. Oh, so they're just tweaking the government's definition of firearms now. Okay. Gun violence in this country is an epidemic, and it's international embarrassment, Mr. Biden said in his remarks announcing the actions. He called high rates of gun violence a blemish on the character of our nation. Well, quit sending out these MKUltra people to commit these mass shootings in an effort to disarm the American people then. End Project Orion. End Project Monarch. MKUltra, Project Naomi. Mockingbird Media. End all of it. He pushed back against arguments that these executive actions would infringe upon the right to bear arms. Changes include reviewing federal policy surrounding ghost guns, handmade or self-assembled firearms that don't include serial numbers, and the use of stabilizing braces on pistols, a modification that turns the weapon into a short-barreled rifle. Not true. Actually, the ATF has defined stabilizing brace on pistols as just that, pistols. They are not rifles. But I guess if we're changing the definition of firearms, then I guess a pistol is now a rifle. Does that make sense to anybody? Sure as hell don't make sense to me. Here we go. Quote, nothing I'm about to recommend in any way impinges upon the Second Amendment, the president said. Mr. Biden said he wants ghost gun kits treated as firearms and have key parts labeled with serial numbers. He also said that he wants pistols modified to be more dangerous to be subject to the National Firearms Act, meaning that owners would have to register and pay a fee for the modifications. Oh yes, you would have to register your pistol at the federal level. You know what comes after a national registration? Confiscation. And I do believe that they are going to attempt an outright confiscation at this point in time. There is no better opportunity for them to do it. This would be the first time that they could actually get away with it. Hope not. We'll see where it goes. I really hope that I am wrong about that. The president, before I go on, he said nothing I'm about to recommend in any way impinges upon the Second Amendment. Well, if you're making laws against firearms or firearm accessories, that's called an infringement, and you're not allowed to do that, because the Second Amendment is about restricting the government, not to give the people rights. It's to tell us which rights the government cannot get involved in. It's that simple. And you guys understand that. You guys know that. The president urged the Senate to pass bills passed in the House to expand background checks. He also called on Congress to reauthorize the Violence Against Women Act, which would close the so-called boyfriend loophole to prevent dating partners and stalkers convicted of domestic violence or abuse from purchasing and owning firearms. Here's something. If you're convicted of domestic violence or abuse, which are felonies, you are already barred from owning firearms, according to federal law. So what are they trying to get done here? Here we go. Whether Congress acts or not, I'm going to use all of the resources at my disposal as President of the United States to protect Americans from gun violence. So basically what he said is, whether Congress acts or not, I'm going to enact whatever I want. And this is just stuff that he did in his first 100 days. Oh, here we go. The president also called on Congress to pass an assault weapons ban. He helped shepherd a ban through Congress as senator in 94, but it expired in 04. However, the measures mentioned by the president are opposed by most Republicans, meaning they are unlikely to pass in the Senate. Most legislation requires 60 votes to advance in the Senate, and Democrats have a 50-seat majority. But Mr. Biden insists that there is common ground between Republicans and Democrats, and noted that gun control measures are overwhelmingly popular with the American people. Lie. Gun control measures are not overwhelmingly popular with the American people. Not this American person. It's not popular with me. And I'm sure it's not popular with any of you. Because on my channel, we have God-fearing, real patriots, not fake bullshit artists. That's what I call them. I know it's painful and frustrating that we haven't made progress that we've hoped for, Mr. Biden said. No matter how long it takes, we're going to get these passed. We're not going to give up. Of course you're not. They are not going to give up until they have seized every firearm in the United States. And then the real fun begins for them, not for us. And up here where he said that there's common ground between Republicans and Democrats on gun control, oh yes, there's always common ground. They all work for the same people. No matter how they make it look with their political theater, no matter what kind of show they put on, they always come to a conclusion. And the conclusion pushes us further and further into the New World Order. Mr. Biden on Thursday also nominated David Chipman, a former special agent with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, to lead the agency. A widely quoted expert on gun violence, Chipman in recent years served as policy director for Giffords, the gun control organization founded by former Representative Gabrielle Giffords, who was wounded in the 2011 assassination attempt. I've already commented on this, but this guy should not be allowed to serve as the head of the ATF because he is the policy director for the Giffords. So he already has an agenda. Do you think he would follow the actual law? Or do you think that he would let his agenda get in his way? Everybody has an agenda, no matter who you are. You have an agenda. I have an agenda. Your grandmother has an agenda. No matter what it is, My agenda is to help wake the American people. Even if it makes you hate me. And that is okay. I don't care if anybody hates me, as long as you wake up. I will have done my duty. If confirmed, Chipman will be the first permanent director of the agency in more than 6 years. And it's mostly run by a string of acting bosses. We already know that. Excuse me. The president formally announced the pick on Thursday as he unveiled other steps he's taking through executive action to address gun violence. Oh, ain't that nice? He was joined by Attorney General Merrick Garland, whose Justice Department will be tasked with taking some of its most aggressive steps on gun policy in more than a decade. Oh yeah, because it's that time. It's that time. Advocates for gun control are pushing the president to classify ghost guns as traditional firearms, a move that would require anyone who buys them to undergo federal background check. Thursday, Mr. Biden gave Justice Department 30 days to issue potential changes in federal rules to help stop the proliferation of the weapons, according to the White House. Given the handmade nature of the weapons, ghost guns often cannot be traced by law enforcement because serial numbers are not required. That's how it's supposed to be. Justice Department is also being given 60 days to issue a proposed rule regarding stabilizing braces. Attaching such a brace to a pistol makes the firearm more stable and, in essence, transforms it into a short-barreled rifle subject to regulation by federal law. Okay, so if you make your pistol more stable, it's now a rifle? Imagine that. Imagine you're showing off your new pistol that you bought. And you go up to somebody and you got a brace on it and you're like, hey man, check out my rifle. They're going to look at you like you're dumb. They're going to be like, don't you mean pistol? Like, no, this is a rifle. No, it's not. It's a pistol, regardless of what kind of accessory you put on it. The White House noted that the alleged shooter in the March supermarket shooting in Boulder, Colorado appears to have used a pistol with a brace. And of course he did. Isn't that just too convenient? Here we go. The Justice Department was also asked to draft model legislation to enact red flag laws at the state level. For years, lawmakers in both parties have been pushing for federal and state legislation that would temporarily bar people facing mental anguish or other personal crises from accessing firearms if law enforcement or a judge determine they present a danger to themselves or others. You know what that means? That means a judge or law enforcement can just say, hey, I think you might be a danger to yourselves or others. Based on nothing, I'm just saying it, so we're going to take your firearms. Why do you think they want these red flag laws passed at the state level? And there are some states who said they won't enforce federal gun laws, which that's great, honestly. That's what the Constitution was set to do, so the states could tell the federal government to go piss up a rope. Do whatever. Go pound salt. But given our current economy, Federal Reserve debt notes and whatnot, if a state wants to do that, the federal government can just say, okay, well, we're not giving you any state funding for anything then. And watch how fast they cave. I really hope that's not the case. Really hope that states stand up for what is right. But let's be honest. When it comes to money and not getting any, the states will most likely cave. Back to these red flag laws. Let's say these got enacted in Ohio. This is hypothetical. So, hypothetically speaking, let's say that these get enacted in Ohio. Let's say that some guy from Ohio decided to make a YouTube channel. Let's say that this guy, hypothetically, has a YouTube channel and he is on there posting things about the truth. Hypothetically speaking, the judge or law enforcement could see that, get wind of it from somebody maybe in the town or anywhere else, and say, whoa, this guy, we think, might present himself to be a danger to others or to himself. We're going to go take his firearms, even though he never committed a crime, he never hurt anybody at all. We're going to subvert constitutional law. We're going to subvert the entire American way. We're going to subvert God-given rights for people to defend themselves. And we're going to go take this guy's firearms just because we don't like what he says. That's how these red flag laws are going to go. Hard it is to solve the problems. Well, there's something else up there. I can't read it because this stupid ad is in the way, but I'm sure it says something like, many people know how hard it is to solve the problems of gun violence, and I know Justice Department cannot solve the problem, cannot alone solve the problem. Garland said in brief remarks, but there is work for the department to do, and we intend to do it. To curb the uptick in homicides nationwide, the Biden administration is also asking 5 federal agencies to adapt more than 24 government programs to help buoy community violence intervention programs nationwide. Oh, now the federal government is going to get these agencies in your community Wait, I'm having a thought here. Oh, the tinfoil hat is going on now. So he's asking 5 federal agencies to adapt more than 24 government programs to help buoy community violence intervention programs nationwide. Could that be misconstrued to mean gun confiscation units? Maybe not. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Somebody please tell me in the comments if you could get that from that. The White House noted that the president's American Jobs Plan proposes spending $5 billion over 8 years to support state and city-based violence intervention programs. Oh yeah, that definitely is what you can get from that. The new plans earned swift support from national gun control organizations Wednesday night. Oh, I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did. And these people don't even know what they're really asking for. John Feinblatt, president of Everytown for Gun Safety, said in a statement that the moves will start to address the of gun violence that has raged throughout the situation and begin to make good on President Biden's promise to be the strongest gun safety president in history. He added later that the decision to target ghost guns and treat them like the deadly weapons they are will undoubtedly save countless lives, as will the critical funding provided to groups that focus on city gun violence. Oh, Lord, have mercy on these people's souls. Chris Brown, president of the gun control advocacy organization, Brady, said in a statement that Mr. Biden's actions will have immediate impact. I'm sure. President Biden's actions